news items. I think we're in good shape. I think everyone's settled in. Andrew, I'll turn it over to you to introduce John.
Great. Thanks so much, Renee. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Super. So good afternoon, everybody. Thanks so much for joining us today. As Renee had mentioned, my name is Andrew Flam. I'm the Regional Director of the Pace University Small Business Development Center. And we are one of 22 centers throughout New York State, providing detailed and confidential one-on-one business advisory assistance to our small business clients. All of those services are offered at no cost to you. We provide a wide range of one-on-one services, which I'm going to talk about briefly, and then obviously touch on some of the webinars that are available through our network. But obviously want to kind of focus and make sure we leave plenty of time for our guest today, John Bandler, a colleague of mine at Pace. So to get started, so in terms of who we are, all of our services, as I mentioned, are offered at no cost to you. We work with entrepreneurs at wide ranging industries, interest areas, and obviously where they are in terms of their business growth, both existing businesses, those who are trying to formalize kind of more of an informal structure. They may have started to do some sales and trying to kind of build that business, as well as folks that are kind of earlier stage in terms of kind of trying to operationalize and bring a new concept to market. So wherever you are in your business, life cycle, so think of us as a resource for you to help. Our one-on-one business advisory service is really focused on a number of issue areas, really trying to target based on kind of what you're looking for help with. Many of our clients we're working on helping them with access to finance to help them build and grow their business. Also thinking about kind of marketing and sales opportunities in terms of how to be able to more effectively target and reach your small business customers. And then operational issues, so think about how to assess some of your lines of business, thinking about kind of what may be profitable, how to be able to expand some, ease out of others. And then, I guess the final issue area I'll kind of touch on really is sort of procurement and certification. We do have opportunities to help small businesses access a wide range of government procurement programs and be able to kind of identify contracts that might be a good fit based on kind of where you are in your life cycle and the kinds of goods and services that you're offering. But ultimately, really our focus is, as I said, trying to tailor those one-on-one services. I have put the first of the 3 items that I put into the chat there as a quick link that will help you connect with the Small Business Development Center, or SBDC, that's closest to you. We encourage you to click that link, take a couple minutes, and just let us know who you are, what you need help with, and your local center will work with you to kind of help address those issues areas. Today is an example of a wide range of small business webinars that our network offers, both our center as well as I said, our colleagues throughout New York State. The vast majority of those are offered at no cost, and we certainly encourage you to take advantage of those. These provide kind of deeper dives into individual topic areas where we focus on and kind of bring on a industry expert to really be able to kind of dig more deeply into a particular topic. So again, delighted to kind of work with my colleague John in today's session, and I look forward to his presentation. And then finally, for those of you that have existing businesses and or family members or colleagues that that have struggled with the economic impacts of COVID-19, there are, as I'm quite sure are aware, a wide range of financing programs and other resources that exist out there to help through this very challenging time. So a number of those programs are still online. Others may get revisited and kind of relaunched at some juncture. And there's also a new program coming out from New York State early next month. So we're keeping our eyes on that, and we'll be able to help our small business clients. So if you do need help kind of making your way through these programs, understanding what you're eligible for and how to be able to access them, I've also included our email address there, as well as a website link that provides information about these wide range of programs that you should make sure that you're aware of and be able to kind of take advantage of what's available to you to help you through this time. So with those brief comments, I guess that's kind of who we are, what we do, and hopefully how we can help. But do want to turn the floor over and introduce again my colleague John Bandler, who's a professor at Pace University, a colleague of mine, and very talented and knowledgeable in the cybersecurity field. He also has his own firm, as you can see on the screen here, and has generously kind of offered to be part of the session today. So, John, really appreciate you taking the lead on this and being able to help our small business clients with these very challenging items. So, thank you so much. And John, I'll turn the floor over to you.
Great. Well, thanks so much, Andrew. Thanks, Renee. Thanks to the Small Business Development Center at Pace in New York. It's really great to be here. And thank you all for tuning in. I put a lot of effort into this, a lot of information. I think you're going to enjoy it. And a lot of information in the slides and that I'm covering, but you have the slides as a resource for later. That's on my website. We'll give you the link to that. This will be recorded. You can watch it again. So don't feel bad if it seems like I'm covering a lot of information that whizzes by you. I am, but you'll have it again as a resource. So thanks for tuning in. Indulge me as I get your thought process going. I'm going to put this into the chat, but if you can find the chat feature, and I want you to think in one word or a few words, describe your feelings towards cybersecurity and technology. Wait till my count of 3 till you hit send, but in one word or a few words in the chat feature, how does this make you feel? For some, it's wonder. For some, it's fear. So I'm going to count to 3, and then you hit send. So if you found the chat feature, put your feeling in there, 1 or 2 words, and I'm going to count to 3 and hit send. 1, 2, 3. All right, hit send, and let's see how you are feeling there. And some did it through the Q&A, and that is fine too. So thanks for that. And we're going to have Renee launch a poll. This is a true-false question for you. There are some cyber crimes that could be devastating to your organization. What do you think? Do you think that's true, or do you think that's false? Put your answer in, hit submit, and let's see what you are thinking about that. Are there cyber crimes that could be devastating to your organization? Get your answer in. And what do we think? We're
at 72%. Shall I close it?
Yeah, sure. Why not? Let's see what people are thinking. I think all of you said true, and I totally agree with that. There are some bad cyber crimes that could really cause a problem. All right, here's our last poll question for a while. True, false? There are laws and other illegal obligations that apply to your organization regarding cybersecurity. Is that true or is that false? Renee has the poll up. Put your answer, true or false, hit submit. What do you think about that?
I did get a question, and John, someone asked where the chat is. All they see is the questions. Michael, if you're on a mobile device, it might look a little bit different. For me, it's right under the questions box. But actually, John, you're on as an attendee too. Are you able to tell Michael where exactly the chat is?
I wonder if the chat is not enabled for attendees. So that may be possible. So you won't need the chat anymore. You won't need the chat anymore.
It's not enabled. Questions
you have the Q&A, and you'll be able to, you can submit your questions at any time. How are we doing with this poll?
We're at 76%.
All right, let's see what people say. So don't worry, sorry about that with no chat, but you've got the Q&A. So what did most people say here? 86% said true, 14% said false. I would say the answer is true for all of you. And you know, stay tuned through this webinar. If at the end you've heard me and you still think the answer is false, happy to talk about that. But I would say the answer is true. So thanks for indulging me on that. Why are we having this presentation? Well, you have to protect yourself, your clients, and your livelihood. There are threats we all face. Those threats can cause a harm. We're talking about stealing funds, data breach, Ransomware's been in the news a lot. You need to protect your organization. You need to protect your clients and customers and your employees, their personal information. You probably have legal responsibilities, and we're going to talk about that. You want to protect yourself and you want to protect your family. I do believe cybersecurity starts in a home. Now, you all have jobs. You work hard at them. You're running your business. You're working for a business. Guess what? Cyber criminals have a job too. They work hard too. They are trying to steal and they don't stop. So part of our job needs to be protecting from them. The threats are real. So I do believe your attention will pay dividends. And these graphics, the dial and the pillars, we're going to talk about that more as we go. So today I am speaking about the intersection of three important areas: business, law, and technology. And if we look back about 25 years, I would say this is how it looked about 25 years ago. Technology was here then, but in its infancy, a little baby. Law and business have always intersected to a degree. And if you look at how all three intersected, I'd say it's that tiny little area right about here. You can see my cursor, my arrow. Now today, think about how technology is today. Technology is everywhere. So much data being collected, stored, transmitted. We're using technology for everything in our personal and business lives. Law and technology intersect like never before. Just enormous intersecting areas just because technology is everywhere and law has to catch up and has been catching up, lagging a little behind, people say. But there's new laws specifically about technology. And if you think about business, and technology and law intersect in a big way now. And here's how they intersect: with cybersecurity, cybercrime, investigation of cybercrime, data breach notification. We're going to talk about those laws. Privacy, we'll talk about that a little. And something e-discovery, which is technology in preparing for litigation or business disputes. So I always joke, I'll talk for the next 20 minutes about myself, but you don't need that much to learn about me. But you'll have this information later, and feel free to check out my LinkedIn site. I think Renee put that in the chat for you. But I have experience as a police officer and a prosecutor. Don't hold that against me. And I'm a lawyer now, so for many people that's 3 strikes. But I had some great experiences, worked with some great people. And as a prosecutor, I investigated cybercrime and virtual currency money laundering back when it really wasn't in the public awareness. I've got certifications, I wrote some books, and all of that helps me to give you that knowledge that I think is most important for you to have. And hopefully this convinces you that I'm worth listening to and following my advice too. Now, every journey starts with a step, and I like to envision this as a nice, relaxing walk through the pleasant woods. We're going to talk about cybersecurity and legal rules relating to it. Each slide, think of it as a step. You're going to improve your knowledge, and it'll guide you and your organization through the following steps. So we've already covered welcome and introductions. We're going to cover a lot of material. It may seem like information coming at you through a fire hose, but again, you'll have this slide deck as a reference. This will be recorded. So I wanted to give you helpful information to take away and not strip information from it. We're going to talk about cybercrime and threats. I'm going to explain cybersecurity in what I think is a simple, helpful way. talk about laws relating to cybersecurity, how to secure yourself with my concept of the 4 pillars of cybersecurity, which I think is really helpful. We're going to talk about incident response and investigation because there are laws relating to that. And also just take away that if you prepare for an incident, that's really going to help you prevent an incident. And a lot of times I get standing ovations after I talk, so I hope this will be no different. And remember, ask your questions at any time through the Q&A feature. I may not get to it right away, but maybe I will, depending on how our time's looking. And then at the end, we'll have time for Q&A, and then I'll stay after the 60 minutes after recording stop for Q&A if we can do that too. So remember, there are threats we need to protect against. There's criminal threats, they're working nonstop. Cybercrime and identity theft is an economy. We're going to talk about some of these ways they are attacking us. Malware, ransomware. There's natural disasters we need to protect against. Those fires, floods, whatever other disasters. We have to protect our privacy. And we also have to think how are we going to protect our customers' privacy and comply with laws too. So there's a lot of threats we need to think about. And those bad things that can happen, and I like to cover this so that people really remember these 3 main things: funds getting stolen, the data breach, the ransomware. And that's not the only 3 things, but we really want to be aware of those threats so we can protect against them. Now, what is information security? What's cybersecurity? What's it supposed to do? Well, it's to protect us from cybercrime, comply with our legal obligations, reduce our risks, and I'll talk about risks and risk management in a moment. We want to plan for those incidents so we can try prevent them, hopefully, and respond to them. And we want to think of this comprehensive goal. Protect and improve our organizations. And we want to think about this umbrella of information governance. How do we govern? How do we manage our information assets? Some of that's cybersecurity, some of that's incident response planning, some of that's privacy, planning for potential litigation, and how can we use our information assets efficiently? Sometimes we're just happy it works. We don't want to monkey with it. But if we manage it properly, we can make it more efficient and more secure. And it's part of governance, management. How can we manage things well, including our information assets? So what's risk management? And I like my concept of the cybersecurity and risk dial. So where is your risk dial set at? Have you even thought about it? Is it at 0? And where should it be? Now, for fans of This Is Spinal Tap, and as I get older, my audience, less than my audience has seen this movie, but it's fun. But my dial goes up to 11. So risk management, we want to think about those potential harms. What's the likelihood of each of those harms? What's the magnitude of each of those harms? What costs, direct costs? Stealing money, got to pay a ransom, got to hire a lawyer, got to hire investigations and remediation. I have to notify all my customers. And what are the indirect costs? Your reputation's damaged, you lose customers, you lose time, you're stressed. If you're working 60, 80 hours a week, do you want to spend an extra 20 or 40 hours a week dealing with a serious incident? So we want to manage and reduce the risks. We cannot eliminate risks. We shouldn't try because we can't, but we want to reduce them to a level we feel is acceptable. So if you think about all aspects of your organization, think of putting them in this purple box. That's everything your organization is and does. And then within that, think of this light blue circle. That's your information assets and how you need to secure them. So information security is securing all your information assets, your computers, your data, your internet accounts, your communication, how you store information, and more. So that's information security, and I'd say that's a really important part of your organization. And then cybersecurity is those information assets in the digital realm. So the cyber, they're on a computer, through a network, on the internet. And I would actually say that green circle should be even bigger, but you know, we have to make it fit on the slide with the text. So then we have to think about what are the criminal threats to your organization and your information systems. The data breach, ransomware, theft, acts of terror. And then we want to think about those natural threats, fire, flood, earthquake, etc. So how do we protect our information assets against that? So remember, cybersecurity is a subset of information security. Now, there are 3 objectives of information security. Remember them by the initialism of CIA. There's confidentiality. You got to keep certain data confidential. There's integrity, meaning they shouldn't be tampered with. Only people who have authorization should be able to make changes. And availability. People who need access should be able to have that access. You don't want to be locked out. You don't want your systems to go down. So CIA, that's the objectives. Control types, these are controls or safeguards you apply to achieve those objectives. And I like the initialism of PAT. So physical control, like restricting access, not losing your devices. Administrative is putting rules in place, like having a policy, even doing a training. And then there are the technical controls. Now, a lot of people think cybersecurity is all about technical wizardry, but now you know it's about those 3 types of controls. And I actually think the first 2 are where you need to start. But the technical controls are the firewalls, the antivirus, those types of things. Some more concepts to know. There's a principle of authentication. That's how that computer system recognizes someone and as who they're supposed to be. And you should know there are 3 factors of authentication: something you know, like a password; something you have, like your smartphone; and something you are, like your fingerprint or your facial features. And we're going to talk about 2-factor authentication and why that's so important for you to have on any important internet accounts. Authorization is the process by that computer system gives you authorization for certain parts of the information system. You should go with the principle of least privilege, meaning give employees, give yourself only the least amount of privileges, least amount of access needed to do the job. Don't give access to everything, just the least amount. And encryption's another important part. So all of these concepts, objectives, principles, you can put them into play with my 4 pillars of cybersecurity, and we're going to talk about that. How's everybody doing? You sticking with me? Remember, you can put your questions in the chat at any time. And I'm going to talk about my 4 pillars of cybersecurity. I think it's helpful. First pillar is building knowledge and awareness, and I always lead with that as the most important thing, because almost every cybercrime or technical incident involves some type of human error, some type of human choice that could have been better if they had better knowledge, whether that's the end user or middle management or the head of the organization. And then it goes through devices, data, networks. We'll talk about that more as we go. So here's a question. Just think about this in your head. You don't have to answer it anywhere. What laws apply to your organization on cybersecurity, technology, cybercrime, and privacy? I think we mostly agree that some do. But we're going to talk about which ones exactly. We're going to walk through them. So I like to think of first external requirements or external rules. That's rules imposed on your organization from outside to be distinguished from rules you'll create in your organization. Rules when you tell your employees, this is how we do things. And you might have written rules, you might have informal rules. And we're going to walk through these, but just a brief list. You should know every state has data breach notification laws. Many states have cybersecurity laws, including New York State, imposing a requirement on how you secure yourself in the cyber realm. Most states have data disposal laws. You can't just throw it out. You have to securely delete it or shred it or purge it. Many states have privacy laws. Negligence law is embedded in our legal system, and I think that's important. I'll talk about that. There's contract law. You engage in contracts all the time. Sometimes we don't even realize it. We click accept in terms of service. Those are contracts, they're binding, and contract law applies to cyber. If you get in a litigation, e-discovery kicks in. And if you are regulated, any of you regulated or have licenses, there might be additional rules. Okay, so let's talk cybersecurity and breach notification. There's the data disposal, breach notification, reasonable cybersecurity laws, and I'm going to spend a little bit of time talking about New York State's rule on that, since this is hosted by the New York State Small Business Development Center. No federal rule yet, but there are federal rules about unfair, deceptive trade practices that could extend to negligent cybersecurity. Privacy laws. New York State doesn't have a privacy law, but other states' laws might apply. And that impacts what data is being collected, stored, shared with third parties, how are you using it, when do you purge it, what rights do you give the data subject. So GDPR, that's Europe's law, General Data Protection Regulation. California's got a robust law, so if you've got clients or customers in California, you got to think about that. Other states, New York's got a law, well, it's not a law yet, it's an act in the Assembly and State Senate. It's not a law yet. And we always want to think about our privacy policies because they should be accurate. So negligence law. So someone could be liable, a party, if they're negligent, they could be liable for an act by a cyber criminal. And the elements of a negligence claim, you have to show there's a duty, a breach of the duty, and that damages were caused. And that does apply in certain cybercrime incidents. And the takeaway here is your organization wants to be diligent and reasonable, right? Who wants to run a business and say, we're sloppy and slipshod and negligent? Nobody wants to be that organization. We want to be diligent and reasonable. Contract law, there may be terms in there that implicate cyber. Maybe if they're not, there should be. And so we want to think about the contracts we enter into. And litigation, if there's litigation, each party wants data from the other party that might be relevant to that lawsuit. So we want to think about the data we are storing, how long we're storing it for, what's our document retention policy. Okay, so let's talk the New York State SHIELD Act. So this is a recent law, and this slide gives it to you in a nutshell. So the SHIELD Act is found in New York State's general business law. Those sections are up there, 899AA and 899BB. And it's got requirements for cybersecurity and incident response. It's called the SHIELD Act because, you know, they have this acronym, Stop Hacks and Improve Electronic Data Security Act. They want it to be cute. It is what it is. 899AA, that's about data breach notification. I'll talk about that. BB is about the cybersecurity requirements. So let's talk about notification. So New York already had a data breach notification law. This enhanced it. So if you are holding personal information or private information of anyone, an employee, a client, a customer, and if that information is breached, you will have a duty to notify state agencies and the person whose information was breached. It implies a duty to investigate to figure out what really happened and make an accurate notification. So I think that shows we really do want to prevent that data breach. California was the first state to have a data breach notification law. Before that, companies facing a data breach, they're talking amongst themselves and they're saying this data breach stinks, but do we report it to law enforcement? Do we tell our customers and clients? And a lot of organizations ended up deciding, no, we're not going to tell anyone. We're going to keep it secret because we don't want the damage to our reputation. Now, you could argue that decision is selfish, not in the public interest, and that's what a lot of states decided, and that's why there's now this legal duty to report it. So that is the law in New York State and every other state in this country. Now, here's the new part about the SHIELD Act, is that there are requirements for data security, for cybersecurity, for any organization holding data of clients and customers and employees. And basically, you have this duty to have reasonable cybersecurity. And the section has some detail on what you're supposed to do. Now, some might say, oh, this is a terrible burden. But written into the statute is that reasonable requirement. So ask yourselves, do I want to be that organization that says my security is not reasonable? You probably don't want to be that organization. You want to be reasonable and diligent. I think that's good for business too. Now, if you're in the health sector, is anybody in the health sector? If you're in the health sector, and yes, I will be sharing this presentation. It's on my website for download. So if Renee can put that link there, and maybe she already has, you can download this presentation. I know it's a lot of information. If you're in the health sector, think HIPAA, high tech, and state rules. New York State's got rules. If you're in the financial sector, lots of rules there. Financial sector, heavily regulated. Lots of rules on cybersecurity, and why not? We got to keep the financial sector sound. We got to keep the health sector sound from collapsing. Bad cybersecurity, it could collapse, implode. We know that. We want to protect patient data. We want to protect financial customer data. New York State Department of Financial Services has its own robust rules for New York State insurance and financial firms. Educational sectors regulated, and other sectors are regulated. If you're doing business with the government, you may have additional rules. President Biden's executive order a couple of weeks ago, that's got some very strict rules. I think it was a good order, calling attention, and that's going to have a ripple effect throughout. And certain licensed professions. I'm an attorney. I talk a lot about attorney duties with cybersecurity. And just because you're regulated doesn't mean ignore those other laws we talked about. You still have to follow those. All right, so I'm going to talk about my 4 pillars of cybersecurity. And look, I know that was a lot of legal information, but now you know it's out there and you have this as a resource, and lots of short articles on my website too for information too. And I'll talk about my cybersecurity risk dial too. Now, I think my principles translate between work and home, and I do believe cybersecurity starts in the home for a lot of reasons. You're the master of your home or co-master. You can practice things at home, get hands-on practical experience at home, and bring all the knowledge to the workplace. All my principles and good cybersecurity principles scale from those small organizations of 1, 2, and 4 up to 40, 400, 4,000 organizations. So these principles scale up. Don't say, oh, it doesn't apply to me because we're only 4 or 40 or we're bigger than these others. They all scale. So for your personal life, again, it starts with the 4 pillars. And if cybersecurity starts at home and family's most important, the 4 pillars, and you never end with cybersecurity or anything in life. It's all about continual growth. My website has some helpful forms for your home, and you can use them for a small business too. So here are 8 tips for your personal cybersecurity, and they will translate to your small business too. They'll translate to a big business too. Your email account and important cloud accounts, secure them well. What does that mean? You need a strong password that's unique to each account. Don't reuse passwords. And you should use 2-factor authentication, meaning don't rely on 1 factor of authentication. Don't rely on just a password. That's not secure enough. You need 2 factors of authentication. A password plus a one-time code to your smartphone. That's 2-factor authentication. You need that. Any funds transfer instructions, confirm them verbally. Don't rely on an emailed instruction or change. Confirm it verbally. I'll talk about that more later. And tell your clients and customers and others to do that also. Back up your data, right? You never know what disaster is going to befall you. Lose your laptop, drop it, ransomware, your server, your cloud account, back it up. Run a malware scan. A lot of people haven't done it in a while. Do it. Check your security and privacy settings periodically. You can decide what periodically means, but at least 4 times a year, maybe once a month. And the more you check it, the less of a mystery it'll be. Teach your children. They're the next generation. It's your job to teach them. Help your parents and keep improving. It's hard that first time. Each time it gets easier. Try to improve and think about my 4 pillars concept. Most organizations will never outgrow it. Look, there's more complicated frameworks. I'll mention them later, but they're good. They're done by really smart people in organizations, but really hard for small organizations to use those more complicated frameworks. My 4 pillars you can use. So in an organization, remember, sound principles scale up. So everything I talked about for your personal life and family and home applies. From small to large, if it's a good principle, and mine are, it scales up. More formality might be required. Documentation might be required because remember, people's recollections of what was said or how we do it, recollections differ, but documentation makes things clear. You want to apply those 3 objectives, CIA, confidentiality, integrity, availability. You want to think risk management, right? You can't eliminate all risks, so you want to think, what are these priority risks and threats and how do I mitigate them? Protect our organization, that's the goal. Prevent cybercrime, comply with our legal requirements, and remember, those 4 pillars will serve you well. Okay, so what does that mean? 4 pillars, I'll walk through it. There's knowledge, devices, data, networks. So with knowledge, remember how it starts with knowledge, because if we don't have knowledge and awareness, we don't know how to apply it to the next pillars. Human decisions affect everything from that newest hire to the founder and owner. If we don't have good knowledge and awareness, we're not making good decisions. You're tuning in now, that's great. That's knowledge. Resources on my website, lots of other ways to get knowledge and improve. How you operate technology is important too. So if you think about driving a car, imagine if you drove a car and you didn't understand the basics about that steering wheel, the accelerator, the brake. What's the seatbelt thing do and how do I do it? What do the locks do? When should I use the car locks? That would be unthinkable, right? Imagine if you didn't know that when that white stuff, snow comes down, the road gets slippery. I mean, imagine if you didn't know that. Well, imagine if you don't understand certain things about how to secure your devices or data. Look, we can't all be technical wizards, nor would we want to, but some knowledge helps us operate our technology. And that's why in each of my books, I have chapters devoted to this. And that's why we're talking about it a little now. Knowledge ties into this email funds transfer fraud, and you may hear it as business email compromise, you may hear it as CEO fraud, but we need knowledge to protect from this. We need to recognize this fraud, and if all of you tuning in, paying attention to this and the next couple slides, that this saves you from having that bank wire misdirected, whether it's $10,000, $100,000, $1 million, whatever volume you're transmitting is significant to your size business, and criminals are making billions of dollars with this fraud. Every organization's at risk. If you're sending payments, receiving them, transmitting payment instructions, you're at risk. So you need to secure your email account with strong password and two-factor authentication, and you need to know that other people might not do that. And that's why you must have the verbal confirmation of any funds transfer. So let me walk you through how this happens, because sometimes you hear that and you're like, yeah. But this, I hope, crystallizes how this happens. Someone's email account is hacked, and the cyber criminals are sitting in that email account, reading all the past emails and reading all the emails going back and forth. And they see that a pending funds transfer, a deal, a purchase, home purchase, a wire transfer is about to happen. So they get ready to intercept and misdirect it. And I guess I'm doing pretty good on time. Actually, I might have to pick it up a little. So the purchaser says, hey, send me that usual order for this month, or send me this amount. The supplier says, great, send that payment like you always have for the last year. And then that criminal jumps in pretending to be the supplier and says, wait, we just changed banks, send it here. And the purchaser is like, oh, okay, I'll send it where you said. And the criminal is now delaying things and says, okay, we got your money, we'll ship it. And of course, the real supplier did not get the money. It got stolen. It's getting bounced, and eventually it goes to another country, may not be recoverable. Money stolen. It's a nightmare. So that's how it happens. So we have to protect against that. Okay, second pillar, secure our devices. That does start with an inventory. Keeping physical control over them, don't let them get lost. When you put them into service and take them out of service, have a procedure, configure them securely, update them, patch them, run secure applications, and then that's the basics, and there's more complicated things to do. We got to secure our data. Where's our data? Think about that. Inventory it. Hard, easier said than done, but we got to try. What if certain data was compromised, breached? What would that do to you? So you want to think about that. What if certain data could not be accessed by you and your team? Think about that. So again, two-factor authentication. Where does the data reside? Different types. Back it up, back it up, back it up. So important. And it gets more complicated from there. Secure your networks. And we got a poll coming up. So just warning for Renee and for you all that a poll is coming up. Networks getting more complicated. That's why it's the last pillar, but keep your routers updated and patched. And we're going to move to this poll. If Renee can put that up. Here's the question. A good cybersecurity policy does which of the following? Put your answer in as it tells the organization employees what to do and sometimes why, protects from cybercrime, helps the organization comply with legal requirements, constitutes a critical administrative control, or all of the above. Put your answer in, submit it, And I'm gonna move forward to get us out on time, hopefully. But okay, how'd we do with people's submissions?
You're at 71%. Shall I close it?
Yeah, let's close it and see what people thought. Wow, everybody said all of the above. Yeah, that's what I say. And I kind of point you to that answer too, I know. But I really do believe all of the above. So let's talk documentation, policies. I would say documentation is advisable, sometimes required. And then the question is how much, what level of detail? We don't want so much that it's so much work to create and maintain and read. But maybe a cybersecurity policy, incident response plan, maybe a privacy policy. What else? Each organization's different. How many of you have documentation and policies? You know, at a certain point, that organization reaches the size and maturity that they really need some. You want to identify those external rules, external guidance. It's not a rule, but it could be helpful. And now create your internal rules. Document and demonstrate your compliance with those external rules and implement those controls. So from my perspective, good cybersecurity does two things: protect you from cybercrime and those disasters, help you comply with all those evolving and expanding external rules. So first we look to the external rules, the laws, regulations, contracts, negligence theory. Now we create our internal rules. And now we look to organization practice, which should be in line. All those things should be in line. We shouldn't have a big gap or difference between those three pillars. They should all align nicely without a lot of gaps. So summing it up, we've got external rules, external guidance. We create our internal rules, which are policies and standards, procedures. Policies are general. Procedures are detailed, and we want them to be clear and understandable, and we want action to be in compliance with that. We don't want to have documentation that's just for show that people don't follow, because that's not good. So if you think about your checklist, a policy, incident response plan, privacy policy, and this is what I think good governance documents should have: practical, readable, all those other attributes. As organizations get bigger, you want to devote more resources to information security. Probably means more documentation. And if you get big enough, you may say, can't use Bandler's 4 pillars anymore, or maybe that'll go to the background. Now we're going to use the NIST cybersecurity framework, the 20 critical security controls, or something else. So it can be very hard harmonizing all these different rules. So keep your eye on the main goal and the underlying purpose of all these different rules, because sometimes they're all going to use different language, terminology, categories. So we want to keep our eye on the big picture. Talk briefly about incident investigation and incident response before I conclude. We do want to plan for an incident. It is a part of cybersecurity. It can help mitigate that future harm because you catch it and you stamp it out quickly. And that planning can prevent an incident because you realize how bad that incident would be and that you only have to do these things to prevent it. So planning is important. If the cybercrime occurs, you want to respond appropriately. I'm a believer in a good, diligent investigation because then you learn facts, true, accurate facts, and those facts can inform your next steps. And remember, that breach notification may be required by law. Okay, this is where you need to be. Reasonable is an important part of where you need to be. Don't be negligent. You want to be reasonable and diligent. Attain and maintain reasonable cybersecurity. Don't do nothing. Don't leave your cybersecurity dial at 0. The 4 pillars starts with knowledge. Create and update your cybersecurity policies. prepare for the cybercrime that'll help you avoid it. Your goal is prevent cybercrime, protect your organization, prioritize risk management, and improve your efficiency with your information assets. Comply with laws, always important, but I put that last because if you're doing the other things, you are complying with the laws. Okay, just recap. Secure your family and personal life. That's where we live. Knowledge and awareness helps with both. Securing your home secures your organization. They intersect and overlap. Principles scale up and down from small to large. Remember my 4 pillars. Remember my security dial and where you are and where you should be. Teach your kids, set the example, help your parents, be aware of privacy and security. Check your settings periodically. Okay, what's the next steps? Now that first step can be daunting, but it's important. So take that first step and then take continual steps for continual improvement. It never stops in life or cybersecurity. Start with that knowledge and awareness, put in that effort. Little happens without effort, and just take one step at a time. Don't try to do 100 things and get overwhelmed. Just knock out that first priority thing at a time, and that little bit of effort can really help. Sometimes you need expert help. Seek it where warranted, and sometimes it's just more efficient from a time and cost perspective. Thanks for tuning in. I hope this was informative. I put a lot of effort in. I hope it shows. I got lots of free resources. I'm going to walk you through them in a sec. And feel free to connect with me on social media or by email. Resources, this is in the slide deck. Short articles you can click on, available at my website. I've got longer articles at my website there. I've got 2 great books. I've got a page about them on my website and where you can buy the books. One on cybersecurity and one on cybercrime investigations. And now I will take your questions. I know that was a ton of information and covered a lot, but again, you're gonna have the slide deck and I'll put the link to it in the chat. So I hope that was helpful.
Great, thanks so much, John. I really appreciate you tackling that. And I think there's a lot of info there, and I think a lot of good best practices, I think, for folks, whether you have kind of a physical presence in terms of a brick and mortar business or for home-based businesses as well, making sure that you're being thorough about separating, your business and personal operations and another kind of important mechanisms to make sure that you're kind of doing all the right things. So thanks again. I really, really appreciate it. And I'll pop out again, and Renee, I guess turn it over to you for Q&A, but I'll be available if there are more general questions in terms of our services. Thanks again, John.
My pleasure. Absolutely. We had one comment come in that the link to the slide is not opening. You may have to, if I put it in the questions, you may have to copy and paste that URL into your browser, or you could click on it from the chat. Unfortunately, I can't hyperlink things in the questions box. But I did go to your website, John, and I was able to view the slides. So if folks have any trouble with that, just let me know, and we could follow up with an email with them if you're not finding it. We had a question if we'll share today's presentation after, and we will. We'll be following up with a recording. It will come from GoToWebinar, and you'll be able to view today's recording there, and then to view the slides. Again, that will be on John's site. I did put in John's LinkedIn, so you guys can connect with him there. That will be in the chat to click on as well. Lots of thank yous, John. And now I will jump into the questions. Oh, and great presentation with a thank you as well. All right, this one's from Michael. What is your opinion of entering emails at the
Have I been pawned?
Yes, thank you, website? I didn't know if that was supposed to be written all together to see if it works and the personal emails were involved in breaches. I don't know about that website, but I think you do.
Yeah, so, I'm always reluctant to put things into other websites. I mean, I think that's a reliable website, but There's so much data breach, so much identity theft that we need to assume a certain amount of our information is out there. We also need to protect our email accounts. So if you haven't changed your email account password, if you don't have two-factor authentication, you know those are things you probably need to do. A lot of our information is just out there. There are things we can do to protect it, but some things are beyond our control. So we need to put our security up to a certain level, so we're just not making it too easy. But again, to your question, I'm reluctant to put my information into other people's websites because you also know there are fraud websites trying to get people to input their information, and then they may say, oh my gosh, you've been breached. Tell us more or pay us to help you fix it. And that's the scam we want to prevent. So trust no one except me and the small business development centers.
Absolutely. Teresa asked, do you have a checklist that we could use when starting a new business?
Great question. So I have a cybersecurity tips from John Bandler, and I wouldn't say it's a checklist, but it's one page of what I think are the most important cybersecurity measures you should take for yourself and your small business. So I wonder if I should, I do have a little something of a checklist if you go to my cybersecurity forms, which is on that page. And again, if any of those links are not working for you, you can try Googling the terms or Googling it to get to my website, although that one page is very new and may not show in the Google search. But in those cybersecurity forms, that first form does have a little bit of a checklist. It may not be exactly what you're looking at, but take a look at them and feel free to ping me if you have any thoughts or suggestions. Maybe that's something I should build out. Thank you for that question.
Absolutely. And I threw in the chat that folks should be able to click on the tips that you recommended and then that form URL. So folks can check that out there. Couple more thank yous and thank you. This is a very informative session. All right. Michael had a follow-up in regards to passwords. Would you agree that password managers are a single point of failure and that all our passwords could be acquired if someone were to hack the cloud of the company we'd be using, or a disgruntled employee could leak or sell customer data?
That's a great question. And you read the guidance, a lot of cybersecurity experts say use a password manager. And I've kind of been, as you're implying, I've been a little reluctant because it puts you into a third-party service. They're going to want you to upgrade and pay a monthly fee. And as you point out, it's a single point of failure, all your eggs in one basket. So you need to make sure you're securing it well. And if you don't secure it well, that's not good. So now in my first book, I do have a technique on how you can create unique passwords that for each account. Now, again, it takes a little away from your security and the password to have a system because it makes it easier to compromise. But to answer your question, I'm with you. I feel it's a single point of failure, but you need a system to manage your passwords because humans are human. It is a challenge to have unique, complex passwords that are secure and not lock yourself out. I got some funny stories of people with passwords trying to make them unique and locking themselves out. It's hard, which goes to show the importance of two-factor authentication, which means you got to make sure you don't lose your cell phone either, because then you're locked out. Thanks for that question. Great question.
Absolutely. And we did have another comment about the links not working, and I'm going to email that person all the links that we talked about. So if anyone else has any trouble with that, in the questions box, just send me a note right now that says you cannot see them, and I'll include them in the email that I'm sending with all of those links.
Yeah, so it must be a feature if you're a attendee of the webinar that it's not coming through. When I click it, it works, just for the record, but
I know it does from the
Sorry.
chat, but in the questions box, you have to copy and paste the URL into the
Okay.
browser. But if you're on your phone, it might be different. And also, if you're on a different computer than we're on, it could be totally different. All right, so I have a couple folks that I'm going to email. I'm just going to email you in mass, and I'm going to blind CC you, so you all will get that at the same time. We had a question come in. Do you have any cybersecurity suggestions for online shops, for example, Shopify?
Now this is you're the customer buying, or you are the merchant selling through there?
Let's see if we can get a quick reply. Business owner of the online shop.
Yes, so that's a great example of where there's going to be a contract between you and Shopify that you agree to, and you're going to want to read that, as painful as it may be, that it'll impose certain duties on you. I'm sure they indemnify themselves if you are breached or if you are negligent in your security. It comes down to that strong, unique password, two-factor authentication, and I may need to take a deeper dive into that Shopify information and portal. So feel free to connect with me and send me some details on that, and I can look into that. I see a good question there about SHIELD Act, where I said small businesses appear to get a carve-out provision, but not really. So yes, in the SHIELD Act, you'll see language there that if you're a small business and they define it based on number of employees and revenues, then they say your cybersecurity program only needs to be reasonable and commensurate with your level of risk and your organization. And I think what they were thinking is that gives you a little carve out, so it's not overly burdensome on you. But the reason I say not really is that cybersecurity and all needs to be reasonable and tailored to the organization. So if you are Chase Bank and we're trying to assess if Chase Bank cybersecurity is reasonable, looking at the measures, their budget, their employees, what they spend, and if Chase Bank said, look, I spent $40,000 last year on cybersecurity, people would go nuts. What do they spend on cybersecurity? Hundreds of millions of dollars. And some people have said that's not enough, or you didn't spend the money right. So for each organization on that spectrum, from Chase Bank to the sole proprietor with no employees, there's a spectrum of what's reasonable and not. So that's why I think that carve out is kind of like, look, we know every organization is somewhere on that spectrum. That's why I say it's not really much of a carve out. So how much should you spend? How much time should you devote? That's a tough question, but like I say, zero is negligent, I'd say. So it's got to be somewhere more than zero. Where do you want to be? 11 is ridiculous. That's too much. 10 is too much. You're not the NSA or Department of Defense. We want to be somewhere, I don't know where. 5, what's a reasonable amount? And there's no bright line answer for that. So that's another great question too.
Did you see the follow-up to that? Did you cover that from Michael? It would be hard for a state or federal government to look into every company. Did you cover that one too?
Yes, yeah. Are they gonna look into every organization? Of course not, and that, I guess that comes down to legal risk, right? If you're driving down the highway and the speed limit sign says 55 or 65, does everybody always go that speed limit? Or do we say, you know what, John Bandler, the state trooper, is probably not going to be here, or he's not going to pull me over if I do a little more. Now, look, I'm not saying that's okay, but that's just life. But here's the thing. There may be a law or rule with cybersecurity, and maybe the Attorney General is not going to look at you, and maybe you're not going to have a breach that gets their attention. But I look at this as like the seatbelt law. I mean, don't we want to wear our seatbelt in a car, even though there's a law? I know I always do, because that's there to protect me and save my life and protect me from serious injury. So there's a seatbelt law. I comply with it. because it's the law and because I want to protect myself. With cybersecurity, don't we want to have reasonable cybersecurity to protect ourselves from a cybercrime? To me, that's a no-brainer. But for those who, it's not enough, well, you can say it's the law too. So it depends what motivates you. That's another
Okay,
great follow-up question. Thanks, Michael.
absolutely. Are ransomware demands paid most of the time or not? Do they ask for more after you pay? And where do you come in as a firm?
Another great question. So the government says, please don't pay ransomware because you're feeding this cybercrime economy. There's been some advisories from the federal organizations that do watch money laundering and whatnot. And there may be some legislation about what is allowed and not, and that's going to be interesting. What if they make it illegal to pay ransomware? So when you pay a criminal, does that guarantee, how much honor do they have? Do they have enough honor to give you the keys so that you can get your data back? They probably do. And do they have enough honor that they're not going to bother you again or release your data or come back with more ransom demands? Probably not. So if we can look ahead, and if we can look ahead to try to prevent ransomware and protect ourselves from having to make that decision whether we should pay or not, incident response planning, and we may say, let me invest in some good backups. So, you see these publicized incidents, Colonial Pipeline, it seems like they paid that ransom to get their data back, and other people have. It's a tough spot to be in. Another great question. Thank you for that.
Absolutely. Claudia had a few recommendations, and I didn't know if you had heard of them. The Bitwarden open source for managing your passwords. Oh, she sent me the link to vault.bitwarden.com #lock. Have you heard of them?
I haven't heard of them, and open source means freely available. You can look at the source code and change the code if you want to, and people can inspect the source code and hopefully see if there's something nefarious in there. But it comes down to that question. If I'm using a service or product, how safe is it? Do I want to use a password manager to put all my eggs in that basket? There's benefits and risks. I saw a great question about VPNs.
Yeah, that was the next one on my radar.
Great. So VPN is a virtual private network way of using the internet through an encrypted tunnel to protect the privacy of your communication so people can't intercept it. And you're going to a proxy, the VPN provider, before going to your ultimate destination on the internet. Again, it's that pros and cons. You're putting your internet traffic in one basket. All your internet traffic, you got to trust that VPN provider. Are they collecting information? Are they logging information? Are they charging you money? And I was just reading an article that was on my saved list, but I just read it, about how China had hacked one prominent VPN provider. So again, it's putting eggs in different baskets. It's that fourth pillar of cybersecurity, use of networks in the internet. A lot of our traffic on the internet is now encrypted by default, even if you don't realize it. So if you notice when you go to johnbandler.com, you see it's HTTPS, meaning S for secure, meaning your communication with my website is encrypted. Not that it needs to be, but you also know you're going to the right website. It's got that certificate. So VPN is one of those pros and cons. If you got a business with multiple employees and they're traveling a lot using public Wi-Fis because they have to use public Wi-Fis, which you want to try to avoid, but maybe you want to think, hey, VPN is something for us, but it's got to be a reliable VPN. Another great question.
Absolutely. Thank you for that question. When I'm traveling, I don't get on the public Wi-Fi's. I use my hotspot. Is there security things I should be aware of with that?
Yeah, that's what I recommend too. If you can avoid using the public Wi-Fi, go to your hotspot, and then your data is going through your phone provider and not going through this public Wi-Fi, which I liken public Wi-Fi a lot of times to being in a crowded room where other people could overhear your conversation. Now, again, if your communication is also crowded room where someone else could pick your pocket, they could try to get into your device. So public Wi-Fi has risks. Try to avoid it. You know, you use your hotspot, you're using up more data, you're using up your battery more, it may be slower. So again, pros and cons. There's no magic answer. And anyone who tells you they have a magic answer, a magic product to solve your problem is probably not being totally truthful about it.
Yeah, we had a comment too, just in here, that the Element Property Management Group was hacked, and unfortunately, that we see that in the news so much more now, and all the information from their residents was let out. We had a couple more VPN questions come in to follow up on that one. What factors one may look for in the quality of a VPN provider? How do you know if one's reliable? Is there one that you could suggest?
Another great question. And let me just tie that into a more in-depth topic of cybersecurity and information security, which is that of third-party management, vendor management. So you start looking at who are the third parties we're dealing with? What vendors are we using? If it's hard enough to secure our organization, we got to think how secure are these services and products we use. So VPN, you know, generally if something's free, you know, what do they say? If the service is free, you are the product, right? That's something they say a lot. So if it's free, are you getting a good value? Why is it free? How are they making money? If it's paid, how can you do your due diligence on the provider? Now there's rankings of reliable VPNs that you can check. I don't want to promote anyone in particular, but you want to do some due diligence and then realize you just never know for sure, because no company exposes all their warts for the world. What do companies say? We're the best, we're perfect, we're 100% secure. And then you read in the news they were hacked by someone. So another tough area.
Definitely. Claudia, to follow up, do you have any extra security steps for web development businesses?
So web development business, so you're developing websites for your customers. You have administrative access to their websites. You might want to think principal of least privilege. First of all, if you're developing it, you want to develop it securely. Also, if you have all these privileges with many people's websites, you want to make sure you are secure, because if you are compromised, the cyber criminal could get access to all of your customers' sites. So are you using two-factor authentication, unique passwords? Can you firewall each of your customers? I know there are interfaces so you don't have to log into each customer's website, because I know that's tough. I don't know how many customers you have. And then, you know, for me too, you want to advise your customers too about how to do it securely. I wonder what platforms you are using to develop, and you know, what tools you can recommend for the clients too. Because, you know, I don't think you want your client saying, oh, you never told me my website could get hacked. I think it's good to advise people.
Thank you. I'll see if there's any follow-up to that. I'll mention quickly, when we do shut down the webinar, you'll be prompted to complete a survey. There are a ton of questions on there we are required to ask you. You are not required to answer all of them. The ones we like you to answer are letting us know how today went and what future webinars you'd like to see. So if you take a moment and do that survey, we would appreciate that. The ones that we want you to answer are towards the end. And there's one at the beginning we want you to answer, and it's to join Pace's email list. So if you can take a moment after the webinar to fill that out, that would be much appreciated. We did get one more question in. If I use some information on Encyclopedia, is it violating the privacy policies?
Use some information on Wikipedia? Yeah, I'm not sure what that means.
Yeah, I'm not either.
And let's just mention too, what are the two things we agree to when we visit a website frequently without thinking? There's a terms of use, which is like the contract about how to use the website, and then the privacy policy, which is how they're going to collect, use, share your information. So you may be talking about a terms of use. Is it copyrighted? When are you allowed to use it? If you're talking Wikipedia, you know, what do they have? The Creative Commons license that they want you to attribute it to them. You can use it, but you know, cite it, and I think that's a good rule too, which is don't pass off someone else's writing as your own. It's okay to use it, and then you can cite to it. Hope that helps. And a little afield from cybersecurity, but I teach a course on law and information systems and entrepreneurship. So ties in with that course.
Oh, absolutely. We had a follow-up to that one that, yes, they were talking about Wikipedia, I believe, or they were saying, yes, you answered their question. So either way, we're
Great,
covered.
great.
If we missed your question for some reason, definitely follow up to that go-to webinar email. Michael had a quick one. John, I'll let you read quick while I go over a few housekeeping items to see if we need to follow up on that one. But you can reply to your go-to-webinar email if you have any follow-up questions. You can also reply to the PACE email. If you're outside of the PACE centers area, there's 22 centers throughout New York State that you can connect with. And the recording, as I mentioned, will be coming from the GoToWebinar email as well. Did you get a chance to read Michael's question? I didn't read through it
I
all the
did.
way yet.
Now
Okay.
I am a believer. I don't think I'm a control freak, but I am a believer in control. So like when I teach cybersecurity or have clients, I want to give them some control, teach them how to take control. So to your question about the website, I like business owners to be in control, to know how to do their website, that it's not a mystery that only someone else can do. Now, maybe building it out, sometimes you need expert help. It'll save you time. It might save you money. So, I mean, I happen to like WordPress. A lot of people use WordPress, many adopters, a lot of great plugins. And there's also experts you could hire to do your WordPress site too. Open source versus proprietary software. Open source a lot of times is great. It's maintained by a great community of volunteers. A lot of people use it and test it. A lot of proprietary software is just open source software, all packaged up, and they call it proprietary, but it's made from a lot of open source components. So I'm a fan of open source stuff too. So, I mean, if you're starting, I would say take some control of your website, and maybe there's someone who can help you build the basics or consult with you to do some of those basics.
Yeah, we had a follow up too that there's some other folks that are using WordPress as well.
I'll jump in on that one as well for a quick second. I mean, John's point I think is really on point. I think also you want to make sure that you as a business owner are using a website platform that you can manage, and you don't need extensive coding experience to handle, so whether it's WordPress or Wix or other methodologies. That's certainly kind of a good plan in terms of making sure if you're at launch or trying to kind of reorganize or restructure something that's not working as well for you. And I should reiterate, kind of, we have business advisors throughout the network that can kind of help you with website updates and launches as well. And again, sort of focused on these, drag and drop platforms, because we want to make sure that you have the skills and capacity to be able to manage them.
Yeah, great point. Maybe you want to go to those drag and drop Wix before even thinking about WordPress, because they make it so easy. Great point.
Absolutely. I might have missed this one at the beginning about the emails. Maybe you answered it. I'm sorry if I don't remember. Should we delete our history of emails at certain points in time, even though Gmail makes it difficult to archive?
Yeah, so that's our data, managing our data, our inventory. What should we be keeping? Ties into e-discovery. Imagine if you're sued and now opposing counsel is asking for every email you have relating to this. And now you got to go back through 20 years of emails. So what do you store? What do you purge? When do you purge it? How much time do you spend going through your data? Yeah, Gmail has many great features and also some that are a little bit finicky. So that's just a tough thing. How much are you going to keep? What if I might need that later is what we think. And it's like your attic or basement or that closet you don't want to get to the back of because you're storing all that stuff. But if it's your business, every now and then you want to think and say, you know, do I need all that? When do I purge things? So, you know, some organizations, that's why they have a document retention and destruction policy. So, you know, and also if you store everything forever, now your storage is going up and now they're hitting you for more cloud storage fees. So again, tough thing, individualized for each person and organization.
Thank you. And there was, Michael mentioned he didn't see some of the comments from folks like on the Bitwarden. I'm going to go through and do a quick reply all. The person who asked it shows up as anonymous, but you're able to see the questions in my reply. So for folks that wanted to capture some of those recommendations, I'm going through right now and doing that really quickly. And if I miss something that you're looking for, just reply to the Pace email and we'll get you that information.
Oh, and let me just, with the emails, remember, not just that litigation, but what if your email account is breached? Do you want them to get everything throughout time, or would it have been nice to have purged some of it? So at least they didn't get everything.
Absolutely. I think I got all those reply alls, but like I mentioned, feel free to follow up over email. And I did send those two people that were looking for the links an email to the links. So if you did not get an email from Renee Goodnow, it went to your spam or I have the wrong email, which would be unfortunate. But you can reply to the Pace email if you don't see it from me. Oh, I got one more that I need to send. I think that was the last question. I think we're in good shape. Andrew, did we miss anything? John, did we miss anything?
All good on my end. Renee, thanks so much for managing all of this, and as always, for partnering with us on the session. And John, thanks again for a really engaging session, for your patience and working through a lot of very detailed questions. Thank you both. It's great.
It's great. Thank you all.
Absolutely.
Thanks for tuning in, everybody. This was a lot of fun.
Yeah, there was a follow-up to that wiki question, and it was if they could copy a paragraph and use it on their business site. And you mentioned you do have to cite the source, so you do have to give them credit and let them know where it's from. Did I miss anything on that follow-up, John?
Yeah, that would be ideal, but maybe you can reword it. We're getting into the area of intellectual property law.
Oh yes, we'll have to do one on that.
I
This has
think
been fantastic. I really appreciate it. I always learn something on these, so I appreciate it. Andrew, it's been a pleasure. John, it's been a pleasure. Again, if anybody has any follow-up, I think I've said it a million times, you know how to get in touch with us. Fill out the survey and keep an eye out for the recording. I hope everyone has a great day.
Great. Thank you,
Thanks.
everybody.
Bye.
Take care.